to save some time, I'll start while we're waiting for one of the speakers who's arriving very soon. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming. For me, it's an honor to be here moderating this panel about the state of data journalism in Europe, in particular in post-Brexit Europe. Europe is changing, and our fellows from the UK are currently reviewing their position on the globe and are kind of shaping a new context in Europe. And this, in my opinion, reflects on the state of what I'm doing and what these guys are doing, which is data journalism. And poses new challenges, new questions, and I think it's a great opportunity to discuss it all together and see how the role of data journalism is shaping the conversation around journalism in the era of fake news, in the era of populism, in the era of so many changes that are taking place in our continent. And just a quick round of introductions. I start from myself. I'm Jacopo Ottaviani. I am an Italian data journalist. I'm currently an ICFJ Knight Fellow working with Code for Africa and fostering data journalism across two continents at the moment, Europe and Africa. I've been doing data journalism in Europe for 5 years. I had the opportunity to take part of fantastic teams of data journalism that went cross borders and touched topics like migration and other issues that basically embrace the globe, not just our continent. But just to say that I have been focusing on transnational collaborations, and I'm very excited to discuss with these guys what's going on, what's the state of data journalism nowadays, and how can contribute to some elevation of quality and some improvement in the public debate in a way that we can kind of damage control and possibly build on what we have and save one of the most promising projects that we've ever had in our continent, which is Europe, or a European Union that we all like. We all want that. We know that it needs reforms. And we want to give our contribution with our tools. In this case, data journalism will be the tool we're going to discuss and see how things change from country to country, from region to region, across the continent, and what kind of challenges we are embracing now that things are changing so quickly, and how we can basically have a constructive approach. So these are a few things about me. You can come and chat with me later if you want, but since I'm moderating this panel, I want to talk about the speakers. We'll start with Christina Elmer from the Spiegel. She's the head of data journalism in one of the most prominent magazines in Europe, a historic brand, the Spiegel. She's been working with the EJC, the European Journalism Center, that is another lighthouse in Europe in terms of quality journalism and European perspective, even though the EJC is working also in other continents as well. We'll follow with Daniele Grasso, sitting right here with me. He's a data journalist at El Confidencial. He's been doing this for now, I think, 5 years. We started together 5 years ago, and we were having lunch just before and discussing, wow, things are changing, but we are still here. That's good. We are still improving. We are still learning. So I had also the luck to work with him on a number of projects. We are still questioning how we can improve Europe with what we do. When I say Europe in an international context. So you can think of Europe as an entity that is interconnected with the other continents. And I'm exploring this now, and I'm working a lot in Africa. There are transcontinental topics, and there are discussions between me and Daniele about some of the next projects we can do together that go even across the borders of Fortress Europe, so to speak. After Daniele, who will give us a hint about the Spanish experience, we'll move to Catherine Sotirakou. She's a Greek journalist and data journalist working at Alpha TV. She's about to start a very nice project on data journalism overseas. I hope I could disclose that.
I think you can.
Yeah, she'll give us more details about that. But it's going to be very interesting to hear from her how data journalism is behaving in the country that hosts the cultural roots of our continent. It's going to be very interesting to hear her experience in Greece. And we'll close with one of the most prominent data journalists in Europe, Nicolas Kayser-Bril, CEO of J++, Journalist++, which is another lighthouse. It has been an agency in Europe working on a number of projects in the last, I think, 5 or even 6 years, fostering connections between countries and starting projects like the Migrants Files and many others that had a nice impact, both from a methodological point of view, meaning that it was an inspiration for many journalists like myself and others to replicate that model in other projects, and another number of experiences that has been run during the last 5 years. So I would start with Christina. I think, yes, I managed to speak less than 6 minutes. We'll have alpha hour of questions by the end of the panel, so I hope we can start and be very brief. Please ask questions, because this is a horizontal debate. We want to build and rebuild Europe all together and see how data journalism can basically be a tool for that. So thanks for coming again, and I'll leave the stage to Christina now.
Thanks for the introduction. Since I only have some minutes, I will start now and go right quickly into an overview of the 3 main factors that are driving data journalism at Der Spiegel, Spiegel Online right now. I just want to give you just a glance of what we are doing. But first of all, how big is our team? I think this is also one important question when you compare data journalism across European countries. We have 6 people in the team, but these are not just not all of them are full employees. So in fact, we are sometimes 2, sometimes 3 people in the team room, and and I think this is just a case that you will find in newsrooms in Germany quite often. For example, the Zeit Online and Süddeutsche Zeitung have tied their data teams closely to the investigative units. You have one really great data and storytelling team at Berliner Morgenpost, for example. We have the Bavarian broadcasters in Munich who have a data team which is quite big. And but all of those teams are sometimes working closely together because we all have a really strong community. One of the important factors for us, indeed, is cooperation, which means that in single projects we team up with other data journalism teams in Germany, for example, with the Bavarian colleagues in Munich, or with Korrektiv in the investigative newsroom in Berlin. So we just like to join forces, to change ideas, and to exchange tools, just to get more projects online. And we also do longer cooperations, like this project that you see right here. This is an interactive globe, which belongs to the project Expedition Beyond Tomorrow. It's a funded project, funded by the Gates Foundation and the EJC, which has been mentioned earlier. And this is just a project where we use this funding to tell stories in a constructive way, dealing with sustainability topics that would have not been on the website otherwise in this that often. And this globe has been developed together with a software and data journalism company, which is called Locala. And this would not have been possible without the funding, because we don't have the UX experience and colleagues in-house. This is just a quiz tool that leads you through 7 questions, and the globe is also an explorer where you can just move it. I think it should be working. Yeah, you can explore the globe, but you can also just answer questions and then you immediately get the feedback what other readers have been answering. This is quite quite a successful format on the website. We have published it 11 times now with certain topics. And for this, for example, we had 30,000 readers who did 300,000 page expressions. And the average reading times have been 4 minutes and 40 seconds on mobile phones and 6 minutes on desktop devices. So this is something we are quite proud of. But the interaction rates on mobile phones tell us that we have to develop this further. So we are doing this right now. And we are also teaming up in EU-wide collaborations, for example, in a new network with Journalism + Vox Europe and others, because I think, as media in Germany, this is our somehow also our responsibility to be part of such networks and to just team up with other data journalists. The second really important factor in our newsroom is the automatization of data journalistic contents on the website. I spoke about this yesterday in another panel. We have 2 data-driven sports projects on the website, which we have developed together with the sports department. They are both depending on the official Bundesliga data feed that is coming in every weekend, and we have set one tool that calculates the scores for every player, and another tool that draws these tactics boards that I can show you right here. For example, this one, or for this other team. And this gives you an impression on dominance on the field, on the players who have not really had much interactions with their team colleagues, and why some teams have had to change their tactics during the game. So this has been developed by us, and now we don't have to do anything to get this on the website because it's really done within the sports department. They do the interpretation, they do the production with an interface that we have developed. So I'd like to have many more of similar projects on the website, because this is really what is visible on the homepage every week, and is also somehow style defining if we want to really change the news that we produce. And the third factor is closely related to this. It's impact. We just try to maximize the impact of our work, and this means that we are not doing or thinking about this one-pagers, data-driven stories and huge visualizations anymore. We first of all think about, okay, what do our readers really want to consume? In which situations do they really get our products? And then we develop ideas. And in most of the cases, we then develop really medium-sized or simple and small ideas, like this one. This is a series that has been developed for the Spiegel magazine. In German, it means something like everything has been worse earlier, or in former times. So against the impression that perhaps the world is really a bad one right now, we have so many fields that have been developing in the last decades. And this is something, for example, smoking in Germany has really reduced. And there are, for example, deaths because of wars, and so many other topics that we look at it this way. And then we have, just because also we love these graphics, we have adopted this format for Spiegel Online, and have just enhanced and put some more graphics into these texts, and then we are just publishing them every week. And I think this also makes a change how the homepage looks and how it feels for the readers, because of these more constructive ways of looking at news. So I think we need more of those techniques within the newsroom, and we need to just also change the way we look at news in a more data-driven way. And this is just our approach at the moment. So this might be changing, but I think collaboration, impact, and automatization could be a good thing also for our audience and the colleagues in the newsroom. Okay, thank you.
Daniele, yeah, you can do that.
Okay, let me just paste a link here. Yes, okay, great. I wasn't sure it was going to work. So, hi, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here with such a bunch of data journalists. In my case, I just wanted to not to show our work at El Confidencial, basically because I did it yesterday in another panel. It would be boring for me repeating the same. So I want to show you more or less how data journalism in Spain exploded in the last 5 years. 6 years ago, nobody in Spain knew what data journalism was. Nowadays, there is only one media that don't do more or less any data journalism at all. It's a media not really important. It's called El País. I don't know if you know it, but all the other important medias are doing it. So to start with that, I think that you have to keep in mind this image. I think it doesn't need any comment. It's from May 2011, and it's a breaking point in Spanish history. And I don't want to be boring on this, but I think it's a breaking point also in the mentality of a lot of Spanish journalists and of journalists that are in Spain. Happening this year, and a few months later, on October 5, was born a mailing list, a simple mailing list that is called that is about data journalism, and it's not only a mailing list, it's also a working group of people that start to talk about this data journalism thing, these so cool, super cool things that media in other countries are doing, and why are not we doing it there. So, and the most interesting thing of this, we can call it movement of journalists online, is the fact that it doesn't end online. Actually, it has a physical place to meet. It's called Media Lab Prado. It's a public space in the center of Madrid. It's a public building. And so this group of journalists, citizens, activists start meeting there and start doing things, seeing examples from other countries, giving little workshops about how to use data to improve your quality as a journalist, like in a really informal way. And there were people in that group like that nowadays more journalists know, like Marc Cabra, Alberto Cairo, Chiqui Esteban, that were there working and explaining things. And the first really big example of what people were doing there in Media Lab Prado is the Civic Foundation Cibio that was born in 2012 in February, and it is the most similar things that we have to ProPublica in Spain, obviously in Spanish style, so mostly no money and like 5 people. And so it's one of the most powerful data journalism organization from all over the world. And that image here is it's a screenshot from a project called España en Llamas, that is like Spain on fire, and it's the first big data journalism project published in Spain, so 5 years ago, and it's about fires on summer in Spanish forests. That is a huge problem. It's interesting that 5 years ago they tried to sell this project to some media organizations, and they were offered like 200 euros for a 6-7 month project, and finally they decided to publish it themselves, and it was like a huge success. And still nowadays an example of data journalism done right. Then it's also interesting that the same bunch of people that were in this building in the center of Madrid started a master degree, where actually, disclaimer, I studied there. It's a master degree in collaboration with the newspaper El Mundo, And it's really interesting because after the first promotion of this master degree, El Mundo didn't create a data journalism unit, but other newspaper did. While all of these things were going on, another huge things happened in Spain. Also, I think this is my view, in part because of the bunch of people in the building in the center of Madrid. Spain obtained a transparency law that is actually that was approved in December 2013. So it's from the year after we start using that, and so it was really a turning point for us as journalists to how to ask data to the administration, not just calling the press office, but also using the transparency law. And actually, in that same year, we started assaulting the newsroom. At El Confidencial, we created the first data journalism unit in 2013. The year after, El Diario.es and La Sexta, that are an digital online media and the television that 10 years ago didn't exist. They had their own journalism unit, and in 2015 also El Mundo, and also Español, that unfortunately they destroyed after their data journalism unit. That was really good. And then, as I was saying before, El País is not there. Ask them why. The most powerful things of all of these things that I'm saying is that we have effective results. I mean, we have had in this tiny media and not in the biggest of the country, we have had really great projects, like, for example, the Migrants Files, where I collaborated with Jacopo and Nico and more journalists around Europe. Projects like the Panama Papers or Football Leaks, and also Medicamentalia, done by CBO, the organization that I mentioned before, are all projects that have been awarded, have had a huge impact all around the world, and in all the Spanish newsroom, the data units of the different media were the core of all of these projects and investigations. So I think that in this moment, I know that I'm talking about past, but I think that it's important to give this kind of context. I would be really happy to see something changing like that so easily in a country like Italy, for example, just to name one. And I think that what is going on right now in Spain, we are seeing two trends in data journalism that are quite pushed by the situation all around Europe and also across the ocean. It is to give more power to our fact-checking skill, or to create them, that has never been done actually in Spain. And there is a really important point right now on transparency, not only intended as using transparency laws, but also using transparency as a journalist. So publish our own database and our own data sets, and also not only for data journalists, but also for current journalists. In this era, if you are not linking to the source of the study if you are not publishing the public source you are quoting, you are not being transparent. And so I think this part of being transparent as a journalist and as media organization is going to be really an important thing this year, at least in Spain, and I think also all across Europe. I don't want to take more time, so I'll wait for your question after. Thanks.
So, hello. We did a survey in University of Athens in Greece about the state of data journalism in the country, and so you know, data journalism in Greece is not so developed as Spain and other European countries. We are a little, let's say, behind. So, in the university, we wanted to make a survey about that and find out the reasons why is that. So our goals was to find out what's happening about the employment, what are the main barriers that data journalists have to face when working with big data sets, and what are the basic data needs and training needs. Also, a big issue in Greece is the relationship between Greek media and data journalism. We have a big problem there because our media organizations do not use data journalism in their newsrooms anyway. So, let's start. We asked 28 respondents from Greece that were journalists and data journalists. And as you can see, data journalism is not their primary employment. So 60% of them said that they are not working with data in their everyday work. So the professions that use datasets and make data journalism projects in Greece are mostly the journalists who work in online organizations, and there are also researchers who work in non-media organizations and freelancers. As you can see, television, newspapers, and radio are far behind. So, journalists have 10 years of experience, but they have only 1 to 4 years of experience working with data. And we asked them what data journalism means to them, and one said that it's like a treasure hunt. It's like trying to find hidden stories by following a series of clues. You need knowledge, patience, and persistence in order to find the treasure. Also, it's a chance to return to investigative journalism and discovering the hidden truth and report all opinions. And you all have a different meaning about data journalism. So I think that journalists in Greece, they know all about data journalism, but they do not use data techniques and tools in their everyday work. So let's see the status of data journalism. So we asked them, and they said that the most of them do not have immediate plans to start a project. Only 5 have already published a project, and only 4 are currently working on a project. And we asked them, why is that? And they said that they do not have training and they do not have time. Also, I want to share with you some of the key findings, and one of them is the skills. All of them said that the most desirable skill in order to do data journalism is coding and programming, and they do not have that, and they want to learn how to code. But in reality, when in the University of Athens or in the University of Thessaloniki, the media departments started free courses about data journalism, all the journalists came and said that they were interested, and after that they failed to keep up with the classes. And the journalists who managed to finish the classes, they haven't published any data journalism project yet. So you can see that there's a pattern there. It's a problem in Greece. So the main barriers are the lack of knowledge, as I said before, and the lack of support of their publishers. And after that, it's time and resources. So this is a nice question because we asked them if they think that data journalism would be desirable at their workplace, and most of them said yes. But those who said no are those who are actually working with data. And we asked them, why do you say no? And they said that, let's say what they said, no funding for computer-assisted or data-driven journalistic content, or it's something new and directors usually want to see results before they invest, unless a news director knows all about it. And another data journalist said that it takes time and effort and I'm not paid enough to do it. We have, for instance, a case that a data journalist completed a data journalist project about public spending and went to a media organization in order to publish it, and they said no. It was for free, and they said no. All of them said that in order to publish a project like that, you need journalists and then programmers and then statisticians. And after that, they said that, let's see, 96% responded positively or that they want to train, they want to be trained, and they want to work with data. But as I said, we have a lot of problems. One of those is the lack of open data in Greece. We have two NGOs fighting with our government to get public open data. We have data needs in all sectors. I do not have to name them, but we need open data in Greece, and we are not having them. So let's see also that. We asked them, do you believe that it's absolutely essential for your job as a journalist to learn how to use new technologies? And all of them, 100% said yes. And only 5 out of 28 had actually taken any kind of courses. So there is a will, but there's not actually, they are not going to learn. So this is the million-dollar question for me. Do you think that data journalism exists in Greece? And almost 80% said no. So we have a problem and we need a solution. And I personally believe that we need everything that we can get from all the European countries, from the European Union. All the data journalists abroad are a great inspiration for us, and especially in UK, they are pioneers in data journalism, and we need some solutions. And I believe that everybody in Europe has to help Greece to have what they had in Spain, the explosion of data journalism. So, thank you so much.
So good afternoon. I'm Nicolas Kayser-Bril, and right now I feel a bit stupid because my co-panelists, who are fantastic by the way, all prepared something on the state of data journalism in their country. But when Jacopo came to me and told me about this panel, data journalism post-Brexit, I didn't understand it like that. So I prepared something more like Gianpaolo tweeted 20 minutes ago. My question is more, can data journalism save Europe? And I'll try to give you an answer in 6 minutes. So in case I don't have the time, the answer is no, but it helps. So my starting point is that Brexit, at least in part, was due to public spheres diverging, of Europeans not living in the same sphere of reality. That's the whole post-truth, fake news debates we're having at this conference. And so my first my first question was, okay, so what does journalism has to do with that? And so I came back to the beginning, which is what's the relationship between journalism
and the truth. And so I found this document, which I copy-pasted here, which is the Munich Declaration of the Rights and Duties of Journalists, which was written in 1971 by journalists from 6 European countries, excluding the United Kingdom. And this declaration of duties says that the essential duty of the journalist consists in, and that's the first point, consists in respecting the truth no matter what. And my question when I read that was, what do I do if a journalist does not respect this duty? I was like, can I go to the police? Is there like a journalism police? Is there a journalism tribunal? And it turns out that, well, there is one European country where you have that, and this is the United Kingdom, where you have the Press Complaint Commission. But it obviously didn't really work well. So I came to the conclusion that, well, maybe some journalists, and I'm sure all of you who are journalists in this room are in this category, that some journalists abide by the Munich Declaration, but if one journalist decides to work in a different way, nothing's going to happen to them. And actually, I spent the last year or so looking for an example of a journalist in Europe who was fired because he did not or she did not respect this first rule, and I couldn't find any. There are a lot in the US who are fired when they make a false report, but in Europe, I'm still looking for one. So if you have an example from your country, send me an email. I'll be really happy to update my presentation. So the consequence of us not having a journalism police is this. You have this media brand, which you might be aware is sponsoring this conference, who published, that's from, what, last week or so? They published a piece of news saying that straight bananas, this rule on straight bananas would be the first rule to be scrapped by Brexit. And obviously, as you know, and as this Twitter person said, the whole thing about straight bananas was false. So I just put that here to show that respectable news organizations that sponsor fantastic conferences where great journalists go are not immune to not respecting the Munich Charter on the duties of journalists. And what's really interesting in this case is that on Sky News, on the British Sky News, you'll find an article that says that this is false, that the whole straight bananas thing was totally false. But my point is just to say that if we look at what caused the European public opinion to split in different realities, well, lies is part of the answer, but journalism has nothing to do with that. As a journalist, you can publish lies, you can publish the truth, you're not going to have any trouble in Europe either way. And so my last point is about data journalism. And it's something that was already said actually by Catherine. When we think about data journalism, we think, I mean, us data journalists, a lot of us think about finding the hidden truth. That's a verbatim you showed. You also had using scientific evidence to write a story. And that's, I think that's very specific to data journalism, trying to apply the method of science to find the truth and to write the story. And so my last point is just this slide. You see it looks like a scientific paper. It's as good as a scientific paper, and it was done by data journalists. It was done by journalists from from ProPublica, in the United States. And my point is to say that as data journalists, you are very well equipped to find the truth, and eventually, if we manage to produce enough factual truth, we might be able to bring back the different realities together and to save Europe. The problem is that, well, as again Catherine said, data journalism doesn't exist everywhere. Even when it exists, as Daniele said, it can be revoked, as happened at El Español. But there is hope still that data journalism will save Europe. Thank you.
Well, thanks to the panelists for the great presentations. I left some flexibility just to show how the perception of data journalism is different from country to country, how the state is different. And I think the conclusion we can draw, one of the conclusions that we can draw after this brief presentation is that we can all learn from each other. And both countries that have a more developed state of data journalism can learn from those who are starting, because we are all interconnected. And I think we are all part of the same historic phase. So I won't extend my intervention because I want to have time for questions. We have about 25 minutes, and then we have to wrap up. Is there any question in the audience that wants to start? Anyone? I see one hand there. Please, if you can quickly give an introduction of, like, if you're a journalist or if you're just passionate about journalism, and also for whom you want to direct your question, to whom. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Leonie Gebhardt, and I'm from Germany, and I'm studying journalism in Scotland currently. And I have a question to Christina, Emma, if that's fine. I was wondering, when you were introducing your everyday life at Der Spiegel, what is the biggest difference between the classical newsroom and data journalism, or what do both of them have in common?
You mean the working experience or the cycles that we do? Yeah, it's a bit more evidence-based, not thesis-based. We really quite often take ideas and topics in the team and really start to generate ideas about what could be written. Yeah, this is one general difference. It's more evidence-based, but in fact, we are very well integrated into the newsroom. We are part of the daily conferences. We're just trying to support the everyday reporting, as well as doing long-term projects. So, in fact, I think it could be really more integrated, and the difference isn't that big because, given these days when we have false news or false facts going around, we need those techniques in every department and really many stories as we see it. So, the support is really a big factor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, next input from anywhere in the room? Because if not, I have a couple of questions myself, but we have one here first.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Carlotta from Rome, but I study digital journalism in London. So we heard a lot about data journalism in different countries, but I wanted to ask, what is the situation currently in Italy of data journalism? To Jacopo.
Okay, that's a good question. What's the state of data journalism in Italy? It's still developing. It's still a baby. Hopefully the baby will grow up soon and will start growing up soon. I think so far it's been developed by mostly freelancers who are really passionate about journalism in general. I think we can start dropping the data label very soon. We are already considering the idea of talking about journalism anyways. So when we refer to data journalism, we do it for like a matter of economy. You know, it's easier to think about something by giving a label, but we want to talk about quality journalism in general, and data is just one additional tool to it. But yeah, that tool is not being used very well in Italy yet, and when it's used by freelancers, meaning that newsrooms are not yet fully aware about the potential and how data can improve the business model of journalism as well, not just the quality. I mean, also it's a sustainable way to approach journalism for many, many reasons that have been discussed many times. I'm just saying that when you publish a data story, you're not basically finishing a project, but you're starting it if you want. Because let's say that new data will be published. Once you build an infrastructure, you can simply update it and then relaunch, let's say, an interactive visualization that can create traction again and trigger new debates. That's just an example. So it can be replicated, it can be reused, and that makes a tool like data journalism positive in terms of business of journalism. This is not being appreciated by Italian newsrooms also because data literacy is quite low, as well as computer literacy is quite low. They are moving towards more digital, but data is not really being considered as we would like to. And I think just to connect to what Daniele said before, in Italy we don't have a real data journalism school like they have in Madrid. I think we need that one to grow new talents, people who have hybrid profiles, who are tech savvy, data savvy, and passionate about journalism and quality journalism. So I would start building one of those schools. I think that would be very helpful. For those who can't wait that moment that will arrive eventually, I believe, you can refer to Madrid. Since we are in Europe, we have Schengen. It's not a small thing, Schengen. You know, you can travel from one country to another without visa. We are not really giving value to it, I think, yet. We don't, in this room we do, but I would like everyone to appreciate how cool it is that we can go to another country and take part of a course like that in Madrid and improve our skills in order to innovate journalism. Maybe Daniele wants to give a couple of hints on the school, on the master. He mentioned it during the presentation.
I mean, yeah, but I think that practically speaking, the most important thing of having a master degree is that you can provide newsroom with cheap journalists because our trainee when we arrive at a journalist from a master degree. So we are under low, super low paid, thanks to this fact that there is a master degree. This is the wrong, I mean, the bad part of the thing. The good part of the thing is that you are arriving at a newsroom saying, hi, I'm a data journalism, let me work with data. And on the other hand, just what I left Italy 9 years ago, and I didn't see anything changing in the last 9 years in the journalistic scene in Italy. It's like a rock. It's there, standing, the same faces, the same boring opinion columns and stupid things. I mean, it's quite amazing. Maybe it's the whole country, but I don't want to be negative, so I won't go over there.
It's quite crystallized, but I think there is room for hope. So keep studying around and then come back, bring your knowledge back to your country. I think it's really well appreciated, if you want. Next question.
Yeah, actually, I'd have the same question for France. If you have an opinion.
So on the state of data journalism in France, well...
Is it still a baby or?
It's a boy.
Not really. I mean, it's kind of like Daniele said, it's been evolving for the past, first team was 2012, so that's 5 years. And it's interesting to see that in 5 years, very little has happened. You have maybe, I don't know, 5, 6 teams. Many of the teams failed already. There is the one at Libération, for instance, which started as a full-fledged team, but then after 6 months it just disappeared. There is no willingness from publishers to invest or to take seriously data journalism. And I think that if you look at Europe in general, in countries where publishers are actual companies, like I believe Spiegel is an actual company making money with journalism. If you want to make money with something, you have to invest in research and innovation. And I believe that data journalism 5 years ago was this research and innovation. And the companies that invested there at the time now have running data journalism operations. So that would be Spiegel, that would be Zeit Online. In Switzerland, the big media companies have done the same thing, in Poland as well. But if you look at countries where media companies are just run by rich people who just want to own a media company for the sake of influence, and I believe Italy would be in this category as well, there nothing happens. They might hire one person or two persons for the fun of it, but because they don't invest, because they don't believe in it, in the end nothing happens. And I believe that in 5 years we're going to have the same conversation about data journalism in France and Italy again.
I think what is true is that data journalism and experimental journalism has really very much to do with each other, and we are more and more acting like a hub for projects, for funding, for experiments, and you, as a data journalist, you have to be open to all these things, because if you want to be in the parts of the newsroom where the magic happens or something interesting happens, like in the investigative teams, like you said, it really helps to have data journalism skills, and but you have to be open to just doing new things and not data journalism as you have learned it in the pure form of a huge interactive and a great mobile phone user experience thing.
Yeah. Can I?
Do we have an, okay, yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Nia, I'm from Indonesia. It's far away from here. So I'm studying in London. So I'm gonna share stories about Indonesia. I mean, data journalism in Indonesia. It's still developing now. I think it's the same as Greece. Like, lots of my colleagues are not passionate or excited in data journalism. In fact, there are like fake news everywhere, especially when the election happened, when the election like coming up. And I'm seeking a solution from like experts in front of me, like how did you start data journalism in your countries, and how could I like probably encourage my colleagues or like traditional journalists to like go forward and then think about data against the fake news. Thank you.
I think Daniele can be a good example for this, because he triggered change at El Confidencial. He was basically one of the first data journalists in Spain, joining El Confidencial right after finishing the master we mentioned before. And you know what happened? He created a chain effect in Spain, which is a key, crucial phase, I think. Basically, by proving the value of data journalism in one newsroom and showing that it can bring positive change and be sustainable business-wise, then the others, first of all, that newsroom will start investing in the team. So we'll start adding people to Daniele's team, for example, as they did. And by doing that, they trigger another process. Basically, competitors will see what's going on, and they will follow the example of the Confidencial in this case. So if you want to add a couple of elements on this.
Yeah, no, just some, to answer your question, we maybe will need a panel itself, and that would be a good hint. But in Spain, it's true what Jacopo said, although in Spain we have some problems with fake news, but it's not a huge thing, in my opinion, in Spain. I mean, they're not so widely exposed as in other countries. So it's quite different, the situation. Maybe in that sense, data journalism can add this scientific point to the mentality of journalists, the fact of being there, the data journalism. But in this case, maybe it's a problem of the journalism itself I mean, you need to rethink about how journalism is done. So I don't know exactly the situation. And so it's, I mean, yeah, the data journalists can help giving the scientific point of view on the thing and the scientific methodology somehow.
Just perhaps two ideas out of my experience. I started in 2007 as a full-time employed data journalist at the German news agency DPA, and this was quite a point when we were able to spread the news about this new thing called data journalism or computer-assisted reporting throughout the agency. And at Spiegel Online, I started as a science editor. So I think that science departments are really great teams to connect to, because they are all thinking evidence-based, and this is really close to data journalism. So if you team up with science and environmental journalists, this really could give you some more force for the issue.
Next questions, if any. One there.
A question to Daniele, because you said that you have this master and then you have the opportunity to send people to newsrooms. Are these newsrooms ones that already have data journalists? Because I can imagine like a traditional newsroom where you send a young journalist that knows more than his more experienced colleagues, and this could create certain backlash, you know, with some smart-ass editors that would not, I mean, I just imagine a newsroom situation, because at first when I started working as a journalist, I was placed in the room with the ITs, because there was no place for me in the newsroom, and there was a huge war between the journalists and the ITs. So how do you overcome this and make this shift in the way people think?
That will be another interesting panel too. But I mean, in the Spanish case, it worked differently. In Confidencial, we are 120 people, and it's digital only, so it's different. When I arrived there, I was the first data journalist that they have ever seen, and so they asked me how to clean their desktop because they are aware. So they think I was the guy that knows something about computers. And so the good point of sitting you with the ET guys is that you make a friend between the ET guys and you start doing things with him. And then you present a project to a director, and your editor says, "Wow, so this is what you can do." At least in my 8 years ago. Yeah, but I mean, we have, for example, experiences with El Mundo, for example, that is a more classical newspaper, where they needed to struggle a lot to be recognized as people that actually can give value to the rest of the newsroom. So I think it's just a process, and nowadays the fact of talking about data journalism is quite widely known, so editors start understanding how data journalists can help in their newsroom, so it's going to be easier and easier.
Okay, next question. I see one there, on the left side.
Hi. My question is, do you fear that lack of data literacy in the audience too could be a challenge for data journalism, in the sense that if data journalism has some chances maybe to save Europe, don't we need also something that can connect better to the people? And I'm not sure that data is the best tool to do so. We have heard a lot talking about emotions and news-driven and offered to emotion-moving or audiences looking for emotion. So what's your opinion about that?
Please, yes, Nicolas.
Well, data journalism is a term that we use for many things. One thing that we use it for is to do the fancy data visualizations that might not speak to 100% of our audience. And in this case, you're totally right. But data journalism is much more than that. It's also a method of applying the scientific method to journalism, and it's also knowing how to use a computer efficiently. And you can apply the scientific method or use computers to do journalism that will feel totally normal to your audience. And most of the time, I would argue that the final product of data journalism should be just text, because it's a very efficient way to convey an information. You don't have to bore your audience with numbers, because at the end you should have a story and not a data visualization. You agree?
Do you guys agree? Yeah, Christine, you want to say something?
I would definitely agree that the result of a data journalism project should not always be graphic or something that might not be speaking to the reader in this way. But I think that data literacy is really a problem these days. So if we try to check fact things that we find on social media, and I think we have to explain them in a really, really basis way. We have to really explain our methods, what the numbers mean, how they have been gathered and stuff like that. So to really bring this knowledge to the people, to our readers.
Yeah, I agree with them. I actually slightly disagree with Nicolas. Visuals can actually simplify the transmission of knowledge if they are done in a certain way. So I think Nicolas was referring to those complex interactive maps and visualizations that have actually very sad analytics data. So if you see that the use of these super crazy interactive visualizations, you see that very few users are using them, actually are exploring them. So sometimes it feels like data journalists are doing these fantastic visualizations for themselves as a narcissistic act. So, but visuals can be also sometimes very, very efficient and very cheap in terms of development. Maybe when we run the next panel in 2018, we can do another panel and add it to the list that Daniele suggested. But yeah, I agree that data literacy is a problem among the audience. So it's the duty of the data journalist to fill that gap and simplify and smooth out the transmission and of the message using all tools available out there. Next question.
So connecting with the visual thing, I'm pretty sure you all are reading the New York Times and Washington Post latest like crazy graphics. So what do you think that is this data journalism? Is this visual journalism? Would you say is on the same category, or how does it work? And why are like the biggest and most respected publishers in the world investing so much in this? Like, what do you think about it?
So it really changes from country to country. I think we are all fans of what the New York Times is doing in the US, as we are fans of what the UK journalists are doing. That's when the baby grows up, I think, and you have a functioning newspaper like the New York Times, which has a fairly good business model, a nice amount of subscribers, although it's changing as well. I mean, I think one of the key, if I got your question correctly, one of the key things that we're missing in Europe sometimes is the business model. So you have very virtuous initiatives in Europe, like in the Netherlands. So it would be lovely to have all the representatives, but we have limited space here. And I can mention the Correspondent in the Netherlands. So we are in Europe. They have a great business model based on high consideration of community engagement and transforming the newsroom into a club of passionate readers who contribute to the news. And also they have another objective, resetting the news agenda. So basically ignoring breaking news but going in depth on issues that are considered by the Correspondent as important. And so I suggest you to have a look at the Correspondent and see how they are building their business model around an innovative approach to journalism. It's not only data, it's a number of tools that can be used to improve journalism, I think. Do we have another question? Because we have a few minutes left only. So we have time for another one. One there.
Hi, I don't have a specific person to ask this question. I read some research about data journalism pieces, and it's done by Megan Knight in the UK. So she was looking at the pieces published in different media, and the thing is that whenever we have a talk about data journalism, we are all talking about quality media, but it is also used as a method by tabloids, and also quite successfully, and also sometimes misleadingly, right? So what's your take on that?
Nico can start, yeah.
I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that data journalism is part a method, part tools, and part visualization. And you can do visualization without doing the journalism part. It's very easy. You just take random numbers and you put them in a graphic, and then you have your story. Many journalists, people calling themselves journalists, do that. It's very fortunate for their publishers, who can make lots of money without investing a lot of in journalism. It's very unfortunate for people who care about the truth, but that's the way it is.
There are two books written, I think, in the 70s, so long time ago. One is How to Lie with Maps, another one is How to Lie with Numbers, with statistics. So if you want to have a look, it's been studied by propaganda experts, how to use numbers to manipulate information and to shape the public debate in a way that is not ethically correct.
But this also has some kind of obligation for data journalists, because the graphic will always be remembered much more than text, and it can be screenshotted and shared in another way. So we have to just think about what parts of the stories we really want to visualize much more intensive than maybe in other forms or formats.
And maybe publish their data. And it's a tool, yes. If a journalist publishes their data, you can see for yourself that it's a lie and they want to manipulate you. So, yes.
Like, transparency between journalists and readers is fundamental to basically keep the quality high, meaning that journalists should always mention the source, possibly link it, possibly explaining the methodology behind the data collection, for example, who collected the data. That should be transparently released and explained. If that hasn't happened, then you are laying the foundations for fake news, basically, because who collected the data, how, who's funding those who are collecting this data. This information should be released together with the story, together with the data visualizations. So, yeah.
Like a data biography. Who collected the data and who analyzed it, who made the visualization maybe, because the same databases and datasets have been used from a lot of different journalists and different media. So we can say that whoever analyzes the data can manipulate you the way he wants. So transparency is the key for that.
Maybe we have 30 seconds left for one flash question. Otherwise, we can wrap up. No, they are complaining down there. Okay, thanks so much for being here. Okay, thank you. And thanks to the panelists, of course.